There you are. Welcome, everybody, and good morning. Here we go, another week of stories. I hope everybody's had a lovely half-term break and hope you're all looking after yourselves. And you know what? It just seems like such a long time ago since I've seen everybody. And doesn't time fly? Can you believe, boys and girls, we're now into the second half of the summer term. It just seems like not long ago that I was getting to know you all, and here we are nearly at the end of year one already, or at the end of whatever year group you're in. But here we go, another week of stories. What a great one for you today. Now, this is called One Good Turn Deserves Another, and it takes place in a time long, long way back, long before my time, long before your time. And it takes place in a village where there was once a woman. And the woman had a beautiful house and a beautiful garden, and she would spend all of her time working in the garden. She'd grow lots of flowers and also lots of herbs. And she was well known in the village for being a healer. She wasn't a doctor, but she knew what plants she could grow and how she could use those plants to help people. People who were maybe unwell, people who were sickly, perhaps anyone who had been injured. So everybody came to her with their troubles. Now, the woman one day was out in her garden working hard when she heard a terrible sound up in the sky. She didn't know what it was at first, but she was pretty sure it was a creature, and it was a creature in distress. She looked up, and there, right enough, was a kestrel, a bird of prey, and there it was coming down towards her. It clearly had been hurt, and it couldn't fly properly. Down and down it came, too quick, and then crash landed into a bush in the garden. Well, the bush had given it a soft landing, so it hadn't hurt itself on landing. But when she looked at the poor creature, she noticed that there was a great needle, like a spike, sticking through one of its wings. Oh, you poor thing, she thought. And she helped it to get better. She used the plants and herbs she had in her garden and nursed the bird back to health, healed up its wing, and off it went quite happy. Now, it so happened that a few days later, she was out in the garden again looking after the flowers, when again she heard a strange noise in the sky, another creature that didn't sound very happy. She looked up, and in the blue this time she saw a hawk, a great hawk, but spiraling down and down and down. Too quick, it must have been hurt. It couldn't fly properly. The poor creature came down too quick. It missed the bush, and it crash landed onto the lawn. She ran out to help it, and again she saw this spike sticking through its wing that had been pierced with. That's very strange, she thought to herself. That looks like a spine, like a spike from a porcupine, but we don't have any porcupines in these parts. Very odd. So, using the herbs she had in her garden, she nursed the poor creature back to good health, mended its wing, and off it flew quite happy. A week had passed, and she was out in the garden, picking some herbs, and she heard a great cry. This time she knew what the creature was. It was a great eagle. She recognized its call, and there it was, way up high. But the eagle had been injured, and it was coming down. The eagle, having larger wings, managed to land a little more gracefully than the other two birds had, and it came down into her garden. But it was clear that it had also been hurt, and there, inside one of its wings, it had been pierced by another one of these needles, these long spikes. And again, the woman thought to herself, that looks very much like a spike from a porcupine, but we definitely don't have porcupines in this part of the world. Anyway, she removed it, and using the herbs and the plants she knew how to use, she helped the eagle back to good health. And it was set free, and off it went happily. Not long after the eagle had departed, she was out in her garden, and glancing up the lane towards the end of the village, something caught her eye. A porcupine. She thought, I was right. I'm going to find out what this is all about, because she was a brave sort of woman. And she rolled up her sleeves, and off she went down the road. Now, quietly, stealthily, she followed the porcupine, trying to keep back so it wouldn't know she was following. The porcupine sneaked off into the trees at the end of the village. The woman followed. Then something very strange happened. The porcupine started to climb one of the trees. Porcupines don't climb trees, she thought to herself, but I'm going to follow. I'm going to get to the bottom of this if it's the last thing I do. So, getting to the bottom of the tree, she followed. She was quite strong, so she hauled herself up the branches, up the trunk, up the tree. She seemed to have gone quite a long way, and she was looking down, and she just saw the ground disappear, covered by the branches and the leaves below her. She kept on climbing up and up. Surely I must be near the top now, she thought. But she wasn't. She kept going higher and higher. Looked down, could see nothing. Higher and higher still, until it became apparent that she was up in the clouds, great mists all around the branches. She climbed higher and higher until eventually out she came to the top of the canopy into bright blue sunshine above the clouds. But, and here's the really weird bit, as she climbed out of the top of the tree, she stepped onto solid ground. She was standing in a great garden up in the sky. But she also saw, standing not far, only 2 meters or more away, there was the strangest man she'd ever seen. He was half man, half porcupine, and he pointed and he laughed at her. "Ha!" he said, "Now you're mine. You are going to look after my garden now, and you will stay here working in my garden forever." "Oh, I don't think so," said the woman. "You can look after your own garden. I've got plenty to do back down there." And she turned around to climb back down the tree, but the tree had gone. She was stuck there up in the porcupine man's garden. And so she had to get to work. And the days went on one to another. She worked hard. In the porcupine man's garden, there were herbs which she recognized. There were some plants that she'd never seen before. There were flowers, some familiar, some not, and vegetables growing too. And she was quite busy working under the sunshine, working hard. A few weeks had passed, and it came time she was working in the vegetable part of the garden to dig up a huge turnip, a great turnip, an enormous turnip. No, not that turnip. You're thinking of another story. That's a different story altogether. But she took a spade and started digging around the turnip. It had to be dug out soon, otherwise it would no longer be good to eat. She put all of her weight into it, and eventually it budged. It moved. And to her delight, she noticed that underneath the turnip, where the roots had been, there was a great hole. And she knelt down and she looked down the hole, and she saw all the way down to the ground. She could see her own village right there, a long, long, long way down. This is it, she thought. This is my chance of escape. This is my way out. But how to get down? I'm going to have to start making a rope. So she budged the turnip back over the hole. And over the next few weeks, she started using anything she could find, whether it was plant or bits of old material, anything she could find in the garden. She started binding it together to make the rope. And as the days went on, the rope got longer and longer and longer. Meanwhile, back down in the villagers were wondering where the woman had gone. They had nowhere to go with their problems, nowhere to be healed. "Well, I can't think where she is," said one to another. "She just disappeared like all of a sudden." The woman, meanwhile, back up in the clouds, in the porcupine man's garden, was still making the rope. She kept the rope in the shed because she knew he never went in there, and that was a safe place to hide it. The rope got longer and longer as the days went on, until she reckoned it was probably long enough to get her all the way down to the ground. She waited until it was lunchtime, when she knew the porcupine man wouldn't be out in the garden. This was her chance. She took the rope, took it out into the garden, and heaved and pushed the turnip back to one side again, revealing the hole. She tied one end of the rope to the great turnip, put a stout knot in it, and lowered the rope down the hole. Then, as strong as she could, Using her hands, using her feet, she carefully climbed down the rope. She didn't look down, it was too far. It was too scary. A quick glance, ooh, it's a long way down. Down she went, slowly, a little bit at a time, down the rope. She stopped, looked up at the hole. She could see the great hole that she'd come down. And as she went further and further down, the hole got smaller as it was further and further away. Everything was going fine. Then she heard a sound that made her frightened. It was a cry and a shout. It was the porcupine man. He was there above looking down. And not only was he looking down, not only had he seen that she was trying to escape, he had a knife in his hand and he was starting to cut at the rope. "Escape from me, will you?" he cried. The poor woman tried to climb down the rope a bit faster now. Lower, lower. Quick look up. He was there still, cutting away at the rope with his knife. Faster, faster, down the rope. But then, oh no, she got to the end of the rope and she still wasn't anywhere near the ground. There she was, boys and girls, clinging at the end of the rope. Above her, the porcupine man still sawing away with his knife. How was she going to get down? It was too far. She couldn't jump that far. And then something terrible happened. There was a snapping sound from above as the rope broke. Then the horrible feeling of falling. Her heart rose to her mouth. Down she went. But it only lasted for a short time. She suddenly felt something soft beneath her. It was the kestrel. The kestrel had come and it was trying to slow her fall, try as it might. The kestrel's not a large bird, boys and girls, and it tried, but it was struggling, and she started to fall quicker again. Then there was a great call, and down came the hawk to help. The hawk swirled around and joined the kestrel. The two of them, together, tried to slow down the woman's fall. They did to a point, but she was still falling too fast. They needed more help. Who could help? They needed more. Can you think, boys and girls, who was there to still help? You're right, it was the eagle. And the eagle with a great crow came round in a great arc and then underneath. And the three birds together managed to support the woman and gently set her down in her own garden. The woman said thank you to the three birds, and off they flew, off into the blue. Well, the villagers were overjoyed to see the woman return. And as for the woman herself, well, she was glad to be back in her own garden, in her own home, where, of course, she lived happily ever after. Boys and girls, I've called this one good turn deserves another. And that's an old phrase. And what it means is, if you do something nice for somebody, well, later on, they'll do something nice for you. And it's a nice way to live your life, actually. Remember that one. One good turn deserves another. Well, boys and girls, I hope you've enjoyed the first story of this week. There'll be more to come. From tomorrow onwards, we're back to 10:30 for the stories, but you can always watch them recorded at any time you like. And I hope you're still enjoying them. And they'll keep going there for the time being. Tomorrow, I'm not going to give you any clues about tomorrow's story. You have to find out tomorrow, but it is a lovely one. More great folk tales, more great fairy tales. But that's it for today, so boys and girls. So look after yourselves, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.